Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking all of Michael Sullivan's books that I have read. I have read everything except some of the short stories and then Raira Chronicles, which I do own, but I have yet to actually read. But I will get to them eventually. But I figured why not do a tier list of these other ones instead of having to do, singular reviews. So then this way you can kind of get an idea how I felt about them. So we're going to go in order from, in not like technically, yeah, in chronological order from beginning to end, timeline wise, not release order. So, I will actually start off by saying I did not read Raira Revelations first. I actually read Legends of the First Empire, which I personally think is a great decision to do. I think it's a better starting point than Raira Revelations because it starts you off into the world, it introduces the world. There's a lot of things you're learning through this one, so then when you get to the later books, you're like, oh, I kind of understand more and I'm less confused, but it also makes the payoffs better. If you were to read Raira Revelations first, it would still be good, but I can see where people struggle with it a little bit. So, without further ado, God, I can't freaking speak today, my God. Age of Myth, right here, the very first Legends of the First Empire book, and the first Michael Sullivan book I've read. Now, this book starts to introduce all the main players of Legends of the First Empire. Basically, it takes place in almost a early. It's like before they've even invented the wheel kind of civilization, and these humans are basically overruled by these gods that are elves essentially. But then one of them kills one, and it goes from there. Basically, the human revolution begins. I think this is a solid start to a series, but I think it's B tier. It's very mid. It's kind of hard to get into. It's very low stakes overall. It's kind of just setting up the world and the characters. But I think it could have done better in some ways, but it is a decent starting point. I wouldn't see you reading this and being like, oh, I hated it, but you might be a little underwhelmed. But it's still interesting to see how the civilization evolves a little bit. You kind of start to see them learn new things, and you kind of start to see the magic system being explored, the elf society, stuff like that. Sorry, yeah. So that moves us into Age of Swords, which I think is an A tier book. I think Age of Swords is very, very solid. I think it spans on all the other problems I had with Age of Myth. I think the reason I'm only putting it in A instead of S tier is because of one payoff with one character I felt was a little underwhelming, and they were kind of building it up, and then it kind of just gets shut down from another character, which is fine. But overall, the main adventure of the story is really good. The world building, all that. There's a really heartbreaking scene towards the end too that'll make you tear up a little bit. But overall, this is definitely a solid. It's like an adventure book almost. It's definitely a solid addition. So that moves us to Age of War, which I'm going to put as S tier. It is probably my favorite Michael Sullivan book, just because of one moment at the end fucking rips my heart out and crushes it into a ball. And then it's amazing, and it's such a good book. A lot of great character development. This was supposed to be the last book of the series, but he felt he had enough to add with these other three. There's a dog barking. I don't know if y'all can hear that. That he wanted to continue it. So, honestly, this trilogy here, like I was saying, really solid. The world building, the character development. It's a pretty decently sized cast, but overall, this right here is the best part of Legend of the First Empire, and then we're going to move into Age of Legend. It's not a terrible book, and like I said, we got to look into the perspective of this is in Michael Sullivan's books from S to D. Just because a book's ranked lower doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but it's not my favorite, and Age of Legends actually going to be our first D tier book, just because all it is to me is just a book of setup. It's nothing but setting up what this next couple books are going to be about, and I personally found it to be kind of boring, and it was a struggle to get through. I found myself just rushing to get to the end of it, to push on to the what's next, and to even just get to the end. It almost ruined it and made me stop reading this series, but I managed to push through, and I'm glad I did. Um, but yeah, this one right, or this one, sorry, this one right here, Age of Legend was definitely a struggle. A lot of build up, just kind of, like I said, almost killed it for me. And then next we have Age of Death, which is definitely a step up. It's exploration of the underworld and all that good stuff. I'm gonna definitely rank it above Age of Myth. No. Uh, Actually, okay, we're gonna rearrange things. We're gonna put Age of Myth down at C, just because it's better than this one, but it's still kind of, it's fine. It's really good, solid start, but it could use a little bit more. Then Age of Death is going to go under. No, it'll go in A. Age of Death was really good. It's shorter, but I like a lot of the parts of it. I love the underworld stuff. It does feel like we don't make it super far by the end of it, but we kind of do. It's a very short book, but it's still it's definitely really solid. And that leaves us with Age of Empire, the final book of the series, and it's not going to be going in S, I will say. There's some great moments. There is a part with a character that I felt like their use wasn't really, after the third book, why were they there? I'm talking about a dragon, if you've read it, because that moment in 3 just killed me, but then it felt like it didn't add anything throughout the rest of it. But there is also another great moment too. I think it ranks just a little above Age of Death, but I still don't think it tops Age of War or Age of Swords even. I think it's still, no, Age of Empire will go above Age of Swords. Yes. I'm gonna look. I'm pretty happy with this ranking. I say this is really solid. There's definitely more good books than there are bad ones. The first one not being bad, this one just kind of being eh. But let's move on to now the Rise and Fall. Now, so far we've only got the first 2 books, Nolan and Fairlane, but we have yet to get Ezra Haddon, which I'm hoping is going to be good. But Nolan, the first book, takes place about 1,000 years after these books here. And I have to say, I'm going to put it in a solid B because it's very solid. But however, I feel like it's rushed. There's a lot trying to happen in this one book. And there is a couple of moments that are great and a couple of great parts. But I feel like it could have been expanded on a little bit more and maybe been like another 50 pages longer. And it would have added a lot more to it. Even just the 50 pages would have added a lot. But I will say this is definitely really solid. It definitely beats these 2 as far as how good they are. Again, this one's also really solid. Continues. It starts the rise and fall of a certain empire, and this is the rise. And then Fairlane here is kind of like basically at its prime, right in the middle there. It takes place another, I think, 1,000 years after this one. And this one, it's going right smack into freaking S, because boy, the ending, the characters. It succeeds Nolan in a million different ways. I think it takes everything I didn't like about Nolan and expanded upon it here in Fairlane. It's just one book, but I feel like I've known Fairlane my entire life, or through a 10-book series, and the ending is phenomenal, especially if you would have read these ones first, the Legends of the First Empire. Read them first before reading this one, and it makes it 20 million times better too. And it's also so if you've read all these and then you move into this though, so this is going to be Rhaenyra Revelations. I put them in by the books themselves instead of, so technically they're, so the first 2, Crown Conspiracy and Avampartha, are actually in a volume like this where it's 2 books in one, but really it's considered to be one book. I'm going to break them up like this just so I can kind of try to break it down a little bit easier, because sometimes the first one's better than the second one, so on and so forth. So let's say you've read all the way through chronological. We throw into Crown Conspiracy here. I actually read Legends of the First Empire and then this, and then Nolan and Fairlane. But Crown Conspiracy is the setup of basically the series. It's the first book. And I'm going to give it a solid, I'm going to say it's a solid B. It's right above Nolan. Sets up the characters nice. It sets up the main characters, side characters, sets up the world. It's really solid setup. I really like all the characters. Royce, to me personally, can be a little bit too stereotypical rogue-like, but I think it gets better as it progressives. But then Hadrian's also a great character. All the characters are great. Michael Sullivan writes amazing characters. I know I've just said character like 5 fucking times in that sentence, but Crown's Conspiracy is a great start, and then it moves right into Avanpartha. This one feels more like these other books than that first one, and honestly, Avanpartha I'm going to put right above Age of Empire, just because I love the setting. I love all the developments, all the story and like world developments. I like a lot of the side characters. I like where it leads into. I just love a lot of it. It's such a great end to that first volume. Um, it made me want to read the rest of them. So then we move into Nephron Rising, and this one was fine. This one was fine. Definitely was more of a setup book. There were some great moments. All these have great moments in them, but the overall of it felt, especially with one character, you'll see kind of as these progress, like this one character kind of has like, oh, she has a thing for this character, and then another character, but you want this one thing to happen, but it's like kind of feels forced, and that's how this one kind of felt. I'm gonna put it right above Age of Myth. It's fine. It's good. It doesn't ruin the book for me. It has some, like I said, has some great moments, especially with Hadrian. Well, actually, this is the one I'm thinking of, right? No. Wait, no, this one's actually great. This one is... Ignore everything I just said. No, this one does have some moments that I kind of dislike towards the end. But overall, actually, this one's going to go right under Crown's Conspiracy. This one's really solid. Some great Harry Hadrian development. But the other character development, some of it is okay. But yeah, I don't know what I was talking about. I completely blanked on what this one was about. Yes, this one's good. Emerald Storm is one that I unfortunately kind of like felt like I skimmed more than I wanted to, or I like lost a certain detail at some point and it kind of got lost. But I do remember it being a fun pirate story with some really crazy elements to it. I will say I definitely liked this more than Crown Conspiracy. I still think it's really, really good, but it's still like kind of missing something. All of these kind of feel like they're missing a little bit of something, but overall, still really, really solid. Winter Tide. This one was a little slower, and it actually wrapped up a lot of the plot lines because these are the two last books. It's the last volume, Rise or Heir of Navron, and this one wrapped up a lot. Wintertide wrapped up a lot of the stuff that I wasn't expecting it to wrap up so fast. I will say I will put it right in between, or right here between Age of Death and Age of Swords. It's really great. Again, more Hadrian development. I feel like Hadrian gets some great development in this series, whereas Royce doesn't get as much. He does get some, like a lot in the last book, but it's still not as much as Hadrian is. I feel like Hadrian is really the main character in a lot of ways, but boy is his stuff great. Royce is fine, but Wintertide is still really solid, and that moves us into Persephloquis, the last book. Where will the last book of this be placed? Now, this is going to really depend on... The ending of this depends really on what you've read of this. If you've read this series first, you're probably going to put this one probably in a B tier ending. Because you're like, okay, well that just feels like a ending that doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense, but it's like, okay, did they really have to do that? Why not do something different? But if you've read the other ones like I had beforehand, boom, it's going to go right up here with these three here. Oh, the ending is the last page even, if you've read these other ones and know who a certain character is, oof, just hits you right here and you're like, damn, this is great. This was a great journey. And it's such a beautiful end to this whole series. A lot of the development with Royce and Hadrian, a lot of the reveals are like, ugh, right in the gut. Ugh, I'm dead. I'm gonna cry. Not that the character dies, but you will die anyway. I don't know why I had I don't know why I had to establish that. The ending of this series is fantastic. Luckily, it's kind of cool how each one of these series that I've read has a book in S tier. definitely this is the mid-range. It's a lot of the other ones are kind of in mid-range, but that's for a series. I mean, yeah, you gotta have like the mid-range ones. This isn't like best and worst of all time. This is best and worst of Michael Sullivan stuff that I've read. Age of Legend being the bottom, Age of War being the top. Probably will reread it and not think it's as great, but oh man, these are definitely some three great books, and these other ones are awesome too. So yeah, check out Michael Sullivan if you haven't. I highly recommend his stuff. He's a great author. He's really high up there as my favorite authors. He might be even 2 or 3 personally, I think. Sanderson being 1, and then he might even be 2nd or 3rd. So, well, thank you all for watching this video. It's been a little bit of a longer one, but if you want to check out all these books here, if you're looking for a new great series to read, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.